Very good afternoon to all. We are facing a really big technical issue right now. Everyone over here is very exhausted, including me. But I will try to give my best. Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank the organizing committee of Trivenidevi TDP College and especially Department of Political Science and Department of English for organizing this two international conference. And also, I would like to thank Bhalotia Charcha Kendra for organizing this event, two-day event. Now, today's theme is borderlines redefining political landscapes in a divided world. And the paper which I am going to present over here is titled as The Cultural Tapestry of India, Identity, Nationalism, and the Quest for Belonging. Now, my paper, as the term of the paper is basically cultural tapestry of India. So my concentration will be on Indian nationalism, unlike its counterpart, the Western variant of nationalism, which is the most popular concept when it comes to the idea of nation state, national construction, and nationalism. We all know that Western nationalism has basically given a model to the entire world regarding how nation state should be constructed and how it should be modeled. So basically, when Eurocentrism came into being with the advent of industrial revolution, industrialization, Victorian code of conduct, English education, it was basically thought of that every country is bound to follow the Western idea of nationalism. But one thing that the scholars of Western nationalism forgot is that nationalism is not a principle which can be applied mechanically to every nation state. In fact, the base of Indian nationalism is culture and civilization. Apart from that, spirituality also constitutes one of the important aspects of Indian nationalism. Now, Indian nationalism or Bharatiya nationalism, which in Bhudev Mukhopadhyay's term we know as Jatiyo Bhav. Now, who Bhudev Mukhopadhyay was? Bhudev Mukhopadhyay was one of the notable intellectuals, the first sociologist India has produced. He is a forgotten Brahmin who I would like to quote here Sudipta Koviraj's term that he is a forgotten Brahmin because currently in this classroom, I don't know how many of us know the name of Bhudev Mukhopadhyay. We all know the name of Ram Mohan Roy, Rabindranath Tagore, Swami Vivekananda, etc. But we do not know the name of Bhudev Mukhopadhyay because his ideas has been wiped out from our history books or anything like that. So now who was he? Bhudev Mukhopadhyay Jatiyo Bhav is basically about the idea of Indianness, the idea of pan-Indian concept, where shedding all our sub-identities, that is first of all I am a Bengali or a Marwari or a Gujarati or a Punjabi, these are all sub-identities. But the basic identity of us is that we first of all are Indian. In fact, when it comes to any kind of paperwork, we always mention our nationality as Indian. Now, keeping that aside, I would like to say that nationalism, what nationalism is basically a state of mind. And when we say nationalism, it is basically at the broadest level, it must be seen as a form of historicist culture and civic education, one that overlays and replaces the older modes of religious culture and religious education. Now, to quote Anthony Smith, the founder of the ethno-symbolist approach, what he said is, more than a style and doctrine of politics, nationalism is a form of culture, and mythology, a language, a mythology, symbolism and consciousness that has achieved global resonance, and the nation is a type of identity, quote unquote, whose meaning and priority is presupposed by this form of culture. Now, it was the quest towards this identity creation basically that helped the scholars of Indian nationalism to go for that idea. Now, how Indian nationalism is different from Western nationalism, I will come to that point. It was basically an anti-colonial approach where with the advent of the British rule in India, they basically, the scholars and the freedom fighters basically, they fought against the Western idea of imposition of anything Western. Basically, Indians were emulating everything that was Western, be it their dressing style, be it their code of conduct, food style, anything. And it was there. যখন আমাদের ভারতীয় যারা স্কলার ছিলেন তারা সেটাকে আস্তে আস্তে অ্যাডাপ্ট করা শুরু করবে এবং তারা বলতে শুরু করলেন যে যা কিছু ওয়েস্টার্ন বা বিদেশি সেটা কখনোই গ্রহণযোগ্য নয় যতক্ষণ না তুমি সেটাকে নিজের মতন করে সেটাকে অ্যাডাপ্ট করছো। সো বেসিক্যালি ইন্ডিয়ান ন্যাশনালিজম ইজ অ্যান অ্যাডাপ্টেড ওয়ে অফ nationalized doctrine. not an emulation of whatever the West offered us. Okay. Now, although there is no denying the fact that nationalism is basically a modern concept, but every nation state or every nationalism has a history and ethnicity. Maybe it can be a weak ethnic past or a strong ethnic past, but it has definitely a past. And as I heard, and as I came to know from the keynote session and the other speakers, a very important quote that has been etched in my mind that for according to Anthony Smith, no memory, no identity, and no identity means no nation. So basically, the idea of nation is in fact embedded in the idea of one's very own identity. Okay, and how this identity can be achieved? This identity can be achieved only by celebrating one's own culture, one's own tradition, and by সেই আমরা সেই জাতীয়তাবাদটা তখনই আমরা পুরোপুরি বুঝতে পারবো যখন আমরা পুরোপুরি নিজের ট্রেডিশন নিজের কালচারটাকে আমরা বুঝতে পারবো শুধুমাত্র নকল করে এমুলেট করে কখনই নিজের আইডেন্টিটি নিজের পরিচিতিকে আমরা জগতের সামনে আনতে পারবো না Now, India, we all know, venerates the principle of unity in diversity. We all know that, and it has been celebrating principles from the very beginning. In fact, the first article in our constitution is this only, that unity in diversity should be protected at any cost. Okay, so we all know that India is a land of diversities in terms of religion, language, culture, caste, etc. Okay. So, and this particular diversity has been termed by notable scholars, right? From starting from Jawaharlal Nehru, Rabindranath Tagore, they have often described Indian culture as mosaic, bouquet, rainbow, and according to them, I have also termed my paper, I have used the term tapestry. Tapestry যদি বাংলায় ব্যাখ্যা করি তাহলে একটা কাঁথা যেখানে বিভিন্ন রঙের সুন্দর ব্যবহার করা হয় এবং সেটা দেখতে যখন তার ফিনিশ প্রোডাক্টটা আমরা দেখি সেটা দেখতে খুব সুন্দর লাগে একটা রঙিন সুন্দর একটা সমাহার আমরা দেখতে পাই ভারতবর্ষের ওভারঅল চিত্রটাও কিন্তু অনেকটা সেই রকম এখন আমাদের এই আইডেন্টিটিটাকে আমরা যখন আইডেন্টিটি নিয়ে আমরা কথা বলি তখন আমাদের বুঝতে হবে যে ইন্ডিয়ান ন্যাশনালিটি কিন্তু ওয়েস্টার্ন ন্যাশনালিটি থেকে কমপ্লিটলি ডিফারেন্ট এটা কোনো মেকানিক্যাল আইডিয়া নয় এখানে অর্গানিক একটা আইডিয়া প্রথম থেকেই ছিল যদি আমরা হার্ডারের ভিত্তি করি তাহলে এখানে আমাদের যে রুট সয়েল এবং ব্লাড কিনশিপ টাইপ যেটাকে আমরা বলি যেটাকে ফ্রেঞ্চ টার্মে বোল বলা হয় সেটা বিশেষভাবে আমাদের এখানে পরিলক্ষিত হয়েছে এবং হার্ডারকে অনুসরণ করে কিন্তু ভূদেব মুখোপাধ্যায় বিবেকানন্দের যে ভারত মাতার আইডিয়া সেটাও কিন্তু আমরা ন্যাশনালিজমের আইডিয়ার মধ্যে পাই এবং সেখান থেকে যে ইন্ডিয়ান আইডেন্টিটির যে এমার্জেন্স সেটা কিন্তু আজও আমরা কন্টিনিউ করছি আমি কনক্লুড করবো একটা কথা বলি যে India is and was always a nation. Indian nationalism is unique and has ancient roots. After partition in 1947, Pakistan was created for Muslims by the inhuman and violent division of Bharata, and the dark reality is that it is still struggling to mold itself as a stable democracy and nation. On the other hand, Hinduism, the very basis of Indian nationalism, played a very significant role in reuniting the Indian nation after independence. It should also be taken into mind that at the time of independence, the British left India politically crushed and divided in many sub-nationalities in as many as 5 equal princely states. The situation was such that the entire world was skeptical of India's ability of surviving as a unified nation for long. Russia যেভাবে balkanization face করেছে, India কিন্তু সেই balkanization process-এর মধ্যে দিয়ে যায়নি. We are still the longest running democracy in the world, even after 77 years of independence. We are still a democracy and we are able to continue the democratic values in a very good way. And finally, the principle which Indian nationalism follows is that may all sentient beings be at peace, may no one suffer from illness, may all see what is auspicious, may no one suffer. Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti. That inclusive nature of Indian nationalism is celebrated nowadays. We do not exclude any idea, any religion, but we accommodate and we tolerate every faith. Whoever has come to India to take shelter or refuge. That is the best thing about Indian nationalism. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice presentation. Although the theme is organized, redefining political landscape in a divided world. Now it's on the floor. If anyone wants to ask any question or has any query regarding this topic, then ask. question or okay, at last we will discuss. Okay. So next.
Sir, next key, Ami.
Okay, we'll move on with the next presentation. The next presentation will be by Dr. Kudi Mojumdar. And sir, yes, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. Am I audible, sir?
You are not audible to him.
Am I audible, sir, now?
Please unmute yourself, please.
My mic is on. Am I audible? Sir, am I audible?
Yes, yes. You are audible.
Okay. Thank you, sir. The title of my paper is Fragments in Frames, Personal and Collective Memories of Partition from Selected Stories of Vishwajyoti Ghosh's Graphic Anthology, This Side and That. Now, this anthology, This Side and That Side, Restoring Partition, is curated by Vishwajyoti Ghosh, and this chapter or paper explores the powerful intervention in the cultural memory of the 1947 partition. Drawing on trauma studies, post-colonial theory, and visual analysis, I argue that graphic form allows for a layered, fragmentary, and emotional resonance of reimagining partition, and it foregrounds personal stories and silenced voices which are often left out of the official history. Now, even over 75 years after independence, partition remains a deeply felt and contested subject. Contemporary writers, sir, am I audible? Is there a problem?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Contemporary writers and artists continue to probe its lingering traumas, and recent partition scholarships increasingly challenge official state authored histories that glorify national unity but ignore the violence and displacement that accompanied it. Instead, memory in myth and literature have been crucial tools for expressing what official records often suppress, or what scholars term as people histories or voice of the silent. Now, while literary response to partition span like many languages, and graphic storytelling opens up new avenues of seeing and remembering partition. Now, recognizing that no single narrative can capture the full complexity of partition, Vishwajyoti Ghosh brought together over 40 contributors from the three dominions in this side and that side. His aim was not just to revisit 1947, but to explore how later generations continue to grapple with its consequences and ramifications. In an interview, Ghosh rightly says, I quote, the idea was to explore private partitions. I quote here, private partitions that include intimate and inherited wounds that do not always appear in textbooks. Now, in this way, his anthology joins a broader global tradition of visual response to historical trauma, alongside works like, let's say, Spiegelman's Mouse, Persepolis, or Joe Sacco's Palestine. Now, the very cover page of this anthology symbolizes its central tension, this side and that side. If we clearly remember Shadowlines, the novel, there is also a chapter called Going Away and Coming Home. Now, this dichotomy appears as a mirror image on a background of postal stamps from India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Now, the design suggests both separation and shared origin, highlighting the artificiality of borders. The opening pages reinforce this with immigration stamps and mirrored titles divided by a line that simultaneously separates and connects. Now, this sense of unity in division recurs throughout this anthology. The first story, because I'll be dealing with only selected stories due to paucity of time, the first story, which is entitled An Old Fable by Sabir Khair and Priya Kurian, reimagines the subcontinent as a child claimed by two women, one in saffron, the other in green. A rational king proposes dividing the child into three parts. Though the women reject the idea, the court hails it as a wise, except for a frail, loincloth clad man, clearly referencing to Mahatma Gandhi. Now, this story critiques the logic of partition itself, showing how any division of a living whole leads to violence, not resolution. Other narratives deepens this critique. Nandita Basu's Which Side explores inherited trauma using fragmented panels and disrupted timelines. It shows how memory travels across generations, uninvited yet powerful. The next story, A Good Education by Ani Zaidi, adapted from Manto's story, examines how partition politicized schooling and languages, turning sites of learning into battlegrounds of ideology. And the final story, The Last Circus by Ali Mehmed Hasmi, offers a surreal take. The clown becomes a symbol of lost childhood, and the circus, a space of joy, turns into a dystopian arena. Across these stories, we see partition not as a finished event, but as a continuing wound shaping identities and spaces along after the maps were redrawn. And now, coming towards the conclusive part, by using the graphic form, this side, that side, allows multiple voices, styles, and perspectives to coexist. Its visual, textual layering resists any single sanitized version of history. Now, instead, it creates a mosaic of memory, messy, overlapping, and deeply human. Now, as Ali Sardar Jafri's verse includes in the volume reminds us, I quote, गुफ्तगू बंद हो ना हो बात से बात चले सुबह तक शाम मुलाकात चले हम पे हंसती हुई ये तारों भरी रात चले. Keep the conversation going, one word leading to another, the evening meeting lasting till dawn, the starry night laughing down on us. Now, this verse echoes the anthology's ethos to keep the conversation alive. This Side, That Side by Vishwajyoti Ghosh thus reclaims partition from official narratives and gives it back to the people, not to take sides, but to listen to each other again. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rumela Shah. Am I audible? Anybody from online platform? Any response? Oh, thank you. She has talked about vulnerability and so many questions are arising in my mind also, but due to lack of time, I would like to invite our next
So, please further, we will have next presenter.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you to the organizer for giving me this opportunity. The title of my paper is Borders as Sites of Violence and Attainment of Selfhood in Srijit Mukherjee's Raj Kahini. Now, since we don't have much time, I'll be delving deep into the subject matter. The film is an attempt to delve deep into the lives of the 11 women who are working as prostitutes in a brothel that has been arbitrarily divided into two parts as a result of the drawing of the administrative line of control known as the Radcliffe lines. Pushed against the wall, these women display courage, resilience against the forces of British imperialist officials who are hell-bent on evicting them from the controversial site. Now, those of you who have watched the film, the girls in the film, they come from different social and cultural background, metaphorically representing a miniature nation. The oldest of the lot is Kamla, who presides over the other members as a guardian figure, is known for her religious piety, as suggested by her readings of the Hindu scriptures and counting of the beads. The name of the other Hindu girls are Golab, Juthika, Duli. Golab, probably who dreams of a respectable life, secretly harbors feelings of love for master. A school teacher with leanings towards ideology of the Congress and is looking forward to marriage with him. Fatima, Rubina, Banu, they form the Muslim group, the Muslim core of the group. The new entrant in the brothel house is Fatima, renamed as Shabnam, who, as the film's beginning credit suggests, is a central figure from Sadat Hasan Manto's story, Kholdo. Raj Kahini begins with a small episode in the refugee camp where this little girl has been brought and is undergoing treatment, possibly for sexual assault. The atmosphere in the dense concentration camp is hot and humid, and as the health officials ask the attendant to open the window to let in some fresh air, we see the girl fumbling with her drawstring. The opening scene of the film reveals a telltale account of how this young girl was brutally raped and how she had managed to internalize the scars left by the perpetrators of the heinous crime. Thus, the story of Manto at the beginning of Raj Kahini acts as a prelude to the actual tale of horrors. The conflict in Raj Kahini actually begins with this continuation of the Radcliffe line. Now, Sir William Radcliffe was given the task, he was given this onerous task of demarcating the lines of India and Pakistan within a span of only 5 weeks, and he had never been to India. Furthermore, when the proceedings of the commission was held simultaneously in Karachi and in Kolkata, he could not be present. And also, after the demarcation was done, the declaration was deliberately withheld due to the fact that it might create certain sort of confusion among the people, and also due to the fact that the Vice General, was supposed to be at the Independence Walk at Lahore and Karachi. Pushed against the wall, these women, first of all, Begum Jan actually approaches the Nawab to broker some sort of settlement in order to stall the eviction, as is scheduled to be part of a meeting between the rulers of the princely state and the colonial officials. But he realizes that his political heft has been significantly reduced, and he conveys the same to Begum Jan and asks her to make peace with British officials. But Begum Jan simply dismisses her, rallies all the girl round for a final showdown. Commenting on the role of women during the nationalist freedom movement, Partha Chatterjee has an interesting take. He says that the construct of new women, where formal education was supposed to be the crucial factor for personal freedom. Formal education for the new Bhadra Mohila, quote-unquote Bhadra Mohila, was thought to make it possible for a woman to acquire not just cultural refinement but also to achieve freedom. These respectable women, bolstered by formal education and cultural refinement, participated in India's struggle for independence with an aim to achieve personal freedom. But if you look at the film, the women characters in Raj Kahini, they are neither respectable nor they have received any formal education. As Srijit Mukherjee himself says, it is money that actually normalizes everything. It is the money which talks in the brothel. Interesting, it is in this brothel that these girls get maximum personal freedom. It must be noted that the women in Mukherjee's film do not belong to any man per se through love or marriage, which gives the man complete domination over the women and her body. Tanya Chakraborty, in her article Women and Militant Nationalism, Srijit Mukherjee's Raj Kahini and the Issue of Partition, quotes Susan Brown Miller to emphasize the subjugation of women. Brown Miller remarks, among those creatures who were her predators, some might serve as her chosen protectors. Female fear of an open season of rape and not a natural inclination toward monogamy, motherhood or love, was probably the single causative factor in the original subjugation of women by men. The most important key to her dependence, her domestication by protective mating. In contrast to the subjugation of women under the garb of the protective care of men, the women in Begum Jam's whole house decide to take up the cudgels on their own and fight for the peace plan. And as the ending of the film suggests, it's very significant. Raj Kahini, which is originally written by Abanindranath Thakur, is a collection of small stories depicting the valors of, say, Shiladitya Guho, Bappaditya, Padmini, Hambir, and Rana Kumbho. The implication of the title becomes clear as the film ends with the reading of a portion from Padmini's Trail from Abanindranath Thakur's Raj Kahini. Begum Jan and her troop of women entered the fire in an act of self-immolation. Read in the light of Padmini's tale, the Johor, quote-unquote Johor, performed by Begum Jan and the group of women assumes significance. Commenting on Johor as an act of resistance and celebration of selfhood, Spivak remarks, the Johor, group self-immolation of artistic Rajput war or war widows or imminent war widows, practiced by the Rajput ladies of Chittor and other places for saving themselves from the unspeakable atrocities at the hands of the victorious Muslims, are too well known to need any lengthy notice. Although Johor is not strictly speaking an act of sati, and although I do not wish to speak for the sanctioned sexual violence conquering male armies, Muslim or otherwise female self-immolation in the face of it is a legitimation of rape as natural and works in the long run in the interest of unique genital position of the female. The group rape perpetrated by the conquerors is a metonymic celebration of territorial acquisition. Thus, Johor, in the context of Sridhar Mukherjee's Raj Kahini, becomes an heroic act of resistance, one which gives them the power and right to annihilate their body in order to attain subjectivity and selfhood. In the words of the director, the personal freedom they achieve is different from the political freedom. Yes, I will be coming to a conclusion. As Thamma reads the final section of Padmini, where Rani Padmini jumped into the well of fire with 12,000 Rajput women, all beautiful faces of Chittor with their sweet words and sweet smiles turned into ashes within a moment. Begum Jan and the rest of the women embraced the same fate with the song Bharatiya Bhakta Vidhata by Tagore playing in the background, underscoring the fact that Begum Jan and the rest of the women, much like the Rajput women, bereft of any home and nationality, are destroyed in body but remain invincible in spirit. Thank you.
Thank you. We will discuss regarding your presentation at last. So please stay tuned with us till the end, and we hope we will be there. Okay. So
Sure.
next,
Thank you.
please stay with.
For our final presentation in this session, we have Divyanshi Sharma, and the paper is titled No Place for Hope.
Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to confirm before I begin that is my screen visible to all of you, and am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. You're audible. Please continue.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. So I will start. My name is Divyanshi Sharma, and I am from Sri Guru Ram Rai University, Dehradun, Uttarakhand, India. The title of my paper is No Place Called Home, Displacement, Identity, and Inner Borders in Siddhartha. This is a novel by Hermann Hesse, a German novelist, German author. I am delighted to present this at such a global platform, and I thank the organizers for the opportunity. So we live in a world which is marked by borders. These are not just geographical ones, but emotional, cultural, and psychological displacement, which is no longer a rare phenomenon. It is a shared reality. Through this presentation, I want to explore how Siddhartha, the main novel of Hermann Hesse, a major novel of Hermann Hesse, a magnum opus, written over a century ago, still resonates today. It gives us powerful insights into the human longing for identity, belonging, and home, not just as a place, but as a state of being. So, why have I? The central questions in this presentation will be in this paper will be that what does it mean to be displaced, not just from a place, not just physically, but also from a sense of self? And can we feel homeless within even while being surrounded by society? The objective is simple to explore Siddhartha's inner journey as a metaphor to the modern displacement, where we are occupied with a lot of people around us, with social media, with so many people connecting with us on a daily basis, but still we are alone, we are lonely, and we are still exploring the inner journey, and how the novel reflects the psychological statelessness and fractured identities of the contemporary world. Why have I chosen Siddhartha by Hermanes? Hermanes' Siddhartha is often seen as spiritual novel, but it also reflects a deeply existential journey. Siddhartha voluntarily walks away from comfort and structure from an early childhood, his family, religion, and societal expectations. He crosses inner borders to discover who he is, echoing the struggles. Many who today feel rootless, dislocated, or in search of self are struggling through the same struggles that Siddhartha was doing a century ago. So this novel is quite relevant. The condition today, if we talk about the condition today about displacement, we often think of physical migration, but this paper focuses on psychological and spiritual exile. Siddhartha's journey is not about escaping, but also about searching. His inner borders between desires, knowledge and wisdom, belonging and detachment reflects what we experience in a fragmented, fast moving, globalized world today. Siddhartha's journey through inner borders, it is a psychological exile. Siddhartha's exile is unique because it's voluntary. He voluntarily left his home. Voluntarily left so many places where he was chasing, where he was running towards enlightenment. He left his friends, his lovers, and he chose to leave behind structures that offer identity, religion, family, even friendships because they don't offer truths. In this way, he reflects the modern individual who no longer fits into traditional boxes. He becomes psychologically stateless, not belonging anywhere outwardly, yet searching deeply inward. There were stages. First, he was a wandering seeker. He wanders a lot. He leaves religion, his rituals. He,
I would like to interrupt you. Please come to the point and conclude with 1 or 2 minutes.
I'm not able to hear.
Please conclude within 2 minutes. Come to the main point. Okay?
I am not able to hear you, sir. Should I slow down?
Please conclude within 2 minutes.
Yes, yes. Okay. So the key, okay, so from these were the stages he went through. He leaves religion and rituals. He left his family. He became a merchant. Then he became a lover, and at the end, he became a hermit. He left everything. He sat by the river. He got his enlightenment at the end. So key takeaways is that home is not always a physical space. It is an internal state of peace and self-acceptance. Siddhartha's journey reflects the modern human experiences of crossing borders internally, not psychologically, not just physically. Belonging is formed inwardly through awareness, not externally through labels, systems, or roles. And concluding it with a famous quote by Herman and Siddhartha: "Wisdom is not communicable. The wisdom with which a wise man tries to communicate always sounds foolish." So knowledge can be taken, but wisdom cannot. Wisdom comes through life's experiences, and for that, one needs to leave their home. One needs to leave their comfort zone, and then only one can get the wisdom. One can achieve the wisdom. So this was it. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I hope this presentation helps to reflect you on the ideas. I welcome the questions and thoughts.
Thank you, Deepa. Lots of thanks to the presenters, to online and to offline mode. First of all, I would like to thank the organizing secretary of this international conference, Kendra as well, on the topic borderlines redefining political landscapes in a divided world. Though I do not belong to the Department of Political Science or Department of English, I belong to geography, and the geographers are the cartographers who divide the world to the maps, and according to that, the administrators of different countries or the leaders of different nations used to divide more and more and more, or they reshape their boundaries according to their will for their own economic or social benefits or for their colonization or post-colonization period, whatever we can see, the borders are changing from place to place, sometimes it is abolished, sometimes created. Now, some are thinking the border as invisible, some are thinking the borders are visible, some are thinking there is no border, some are thinking there are borders, but actually, is there any border? Or the border is reflected in our mind. We see borders. Can we see borders in the sky? Can we see borders in the water, below the water? But there are natural borders from the very beginning of the earth. We, the human beings, think that we must be separated from each other on the basis, either on the basis of language or basis of food habits or society or other, whatever it may be. We are dividing ourselves, and sometimes for uniting ourselves, we are abolishing the borders also. So here the main thing is border lines, redefining political landscape. Some papers, I think, a little bit like in the main theme, they were a little bit away from the main theme of this international conference. Although they have presented their papers nicely, and at last I would like to thank all the paper presenters, and particularly Professor Raniganj Banerjee, and particularly Orijit Bhattacharya and Rajeshri Chakraborty sir, Professor Rajeshri sir, and so many teachers and scholars, students are there who are present here, and Bhalotia also, who is working from background technically to run the online platform. Okay, so I would like to thank the principal or teacher in charge of this college, and I would like to ask the students particularly, what did you feel after listening these papers? Is there any question going in your mind? After that, I will ask our experts who are sitting here if they have any suggestions or opinions regarding the papers which are presented. Students belonging to science or English department, any question, anyone query or any opinion regarding the order? Because for the participants of this international seminar, I will be glad to listen a little bit, one or two words from you. Anybody? Okay, then I would like the senior professors who are sitting in front of me, and I am privileged to have some little bit suggestions or opinions regarding the papers. At last, sir, please, one or two words. Please.
Well, regarding Sanjita last paper, I would like to say that our constitution emphasizes secularism, and I think it is wrong to say that the Hindus only were responsible for nation building. It would be wrong to say this, because unless nation, India as a nation, involves all religions minorities, whether they are majority or minority. In the last 10 years, that we are seeing an overemphasis on one particular religion identity, which I think is not correct, because it is destroy the syncretism that lies at the heart of Indian secularism. So I think this is what I would like.
Thank you, sir. Now, I would like to call upon Professor Bharata, sir.
Dear friends, there is a very long notion about the Indian Constitution and the word secular. The word secular appears only once in the Constitution, that too in the preamble. সংবিধানের প্রস্তাবনা যেটা কোর্টে বলবৎযোগ্য নয়, পরিষ্কার করে বুঝে রাখো সবাই যারা পলিটিক্যাল সায়েন্স বা পলিটিক্যাল সায়েন্স পড়ছে না। সেকুলার শব্দটি শুধুমাত্র মুখবন্ধে আছে, মুখবন্ধ নিয়ে কোর্টে চ্যালেঞ্জ করা যায় না। মুখবন্ধ জাস্ট একটা ইন্ট্রোডাকশন, ইট ইজ নাথিং মোর দ্যান দ্যাট, নাথিং। And when the word Hinduism was used here, এখানে তোমরা যদি রবীন্দ্রনাথ পড়ো বা স্বামী বিবেকানন্দ পড়ো, তাহলে দেখবে তারা বারবার করে বলার চেষ্টা করেছেন ভারতবর্ষ, রবীন্দ্রনাথ ইন পার্টিকুলার ভীষণ রকম ভাবে ভারতবর্ষ দাঁড়িয়ে আছে বিভিন্ন সভ্যতার ভিত্তিতে। সভ্যতা, মিডিকেল, নট রিলিজিয়ান বাট সিভিলাইজেশন, ঠিক আছে? এই সিভিলাইজেশন আর রিলিজিয়ানের তফাৎ না করতে পেরে সবসময় এই ইমোশনাল ব্যাকফুটে চলে যাওয়া আর সেকুলার করা, এটা বড় বিরক্তিকর। পরিষ্কার কথা পরিষ্কার করে বলা ভালো। এই সিভিলাইজেশনের বেসে কি আছে? টলারেন্স। যে টলারেন্স টুয়ার্ড রবীন্দ্রনাথ বলছেন কেউ কে কোন পদ্ধতিতে উপাসনা করে সেটা আমাদের দেখার কথা না। একজন একটা বড় বাড়িতে যেরকম একই সঙ্গে একজন বৌদ্ধ, একজন একটা একই মায়ের সন্তান, কেউ শাক্ত হতে পারে, কেউ বৈষ্ণব হতে পারে, কেউ ইসলামিক ধর্মাবলম্বী হতে পারে, কেউ অন্য কোনো ধর্মাবলম্বী হতে পারে, কিন্তু একই জায়গায় থাকা যায়, বাড়ির ভিত্তা এক। সুতরাং দ্যাট ইজ দি বেসিস, দ্যাট ইজ দি সিভিলাইজেশনাল বেসিস। স্বামী বিবেকানন্দ হিন্দুত্ব যদি দেখো, সেই হিন্দুত্বের মধ্যে বারবার করে ইসলামের অ্যাপ্রিসিয়েশন। সুতরাং হিন্দুত্ব শব্দটা শুনেই আমায় তিন পা পিছিয়ে যেতে হবে আর ওই সেকুলারিজম বলতে হবে, এটা কোনো প্রয়োজন আমি বুঝি না। কারণ হিন্দুত্বের মধ্যে রবীন্দ্রনাথ বা স্বামী বিবেকানন্দ হিন্দুত্ব সেটা একেবারেই ইনক্লুসিভ, নট অনলি ইনক্লুসিভ, তার মধ্যে টলারেন্স রয়েছে এবং কোথাও বিদ্বেষ রয়েছে। কোথাও বলা নেই এমন একটা ভারতবর্ষ বড় যেখানে মুসলমানদের বাদ দিয়ে দিতে হবে, বৌদ্ধদের বাদ দিয়ে দিতে হবে এবং মেজরিটি মাসুদা, এটা কোথাও বলা নেই। সুতরাং সেকুলার ওয়ার্ডটা 1976 সালে ইন্দিরা গান্ধী বিশেষ প্রয়োজনে 42তম সংবিধান সংশোধনে জোর করে প্রিয়াঙ্গলে ঢোকায়। পরিষ্কার কথা মাথায় ঢুকে রাখা ভালো, দেশটা ভাগ হয়েছিল শুধুমাত্র ধর্মের ভিত্তিতে, আর কোনো কারণ ছিল না, আর কোনো রকম কোনো কারণ ছিল না। তার পরবর্তীকালে আমাদের নেশন নেতারা নেহেরু থেকে আরম্ভ করে কেউ ওই সময় সাহস পায়নি সেকুলার শব্দটা উচ্চারণ করে। সাহস পায়নি তার কারণ যে পরিস্থিতিতে জিন্না এবং নেহেরু মিলে দেশ ভাগ করেছিলেন, তখন সেকুলার বললেন মার খেতে পারে, খুব খারাপ কথা বলছি, ঠিক আছে? কারণ তারা রেসপন্সিবল, আমাদের যে সিনথেটিক সিভিলাইজেশনটা সেটা ভাঙার জন্য জিন্না দায়ী আর নেহেরু দায়ী, আর কেউ দায়ী, সেটা ভেঙেছেন তারা। সুতরাং তারপর সেকুলার শব্দটা 1976 অবধি বলার পর সাহস ছিল। সেকুলার শব্দটাকে স্মাগল করা হলো কোথায়? প্রিয়াঙ্গল, যেটা সংবিধানের এনফোর্সিয়েবল পার্ট ছিল। সুতরাং হিন্দু সভ্যতার কথা যখন বলা হবে, এটা ধরেই নিতে হবে যে আমরা সভ্যতার কথা বলছি, আমরা কিন্তু কোনো রকম বিদ্বেষের কথা বলছি না, আমরা কোনো রকম কোনো জেনোফোবিয়ার কথা বলছি না, আমরা কোনো রকম এমন কোনো কিছু বলছি না যেখানে অন্য কোনো ধর্মাবলম্বী কোন রকম কম অধিকার পায় হিন্দু ধর্ম যারা প্র্যাকটিস করে তাদের থেকে। এবং হিন্দু ধর্মের মধ্যে অসংখ্য ভাগ আছে, ইসলামের মধ্যে অসংখ্য ভাগ আছে। সুতরাং এই যে ক্রিটিসিজমটা, এই ক্রিটিসিজমটা আমি খুব কমনলি শুনি এবং যেহেতু সংবিধান থিসিসের গাইড আমি ছিলাম, আমার একটা পরোক্ষ দায়ের দিকে যাচ্ছে এটাকে ডিফেন্ড করা, ঠিক আছে? আমি এটা কিন্তু খুব দায়িত্ব নিয়ে বলছি, যদি রবীন্দ্রনাথ পড়ো বা যদি ছাত্রছাত্রীদের বলছি বা যদি স্বামী বিবেকানন্দ পড়ো, তুমি একটা লাইন বিদ্বেষের দেখা, কিন্তু তাদের দর্শন তো দাঁড়িয়ে আছে একেবারেই হিন্দু সভ্যতার ভিত্তির উপর। এটা তো অসুবিধা নেই, এটাতে খারাপ কি আছে? সব সময় একটা কনস্ট্রাক্টের কথা বলতে হবে তাহলে তো হাবারমাসের কথা বলতে হয়। তিনি পরিষ্কার বলছেন সেকুলারিজম লিবারালিজম হয়ে গেছে, এখন পোস্ট সেকুলারিজম। সারা পৃথিবীতে যা চলছে, যা হচ্ছে, সেইটা আমাদের মাথায় রাখতে হবে এবং কোনো বিজনেস তৈরি করতে হবে না। এবং এখানে আমাদেরকে ঐক্যবদ্ধ হওয়ার একটা বড় জায়গা দেয় ভারতীয় হিন্দু সভ্যতা। এই হিন্দু সভ্যতা কখনো কিন্তু বিদ্বেষ, স্বামী বিবেকানন্দ তার চিকাগো স্পিচে বলছেন, আমি এমন একটা দেশ থেকে আসি যার মূলে রয়েছে টলারেন্স। বারবার করে টলারেন্স 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 আর বিজ্ঞান, এই শব্দটা চিকাগো বক্তৃতার প্রথম বক্তৃতায় কতবার ব্যবহৃত হয়েছে দেখতে হবে। সুতরাং হিন্দু শব্দটা শুনতেই সেটা একটা নেগেটিভ কনোটেশন। আমি কিন্তু রিকোয়েস্ট করবো এটা না ভাবতে, কারণ এখানে ওপেন সেন্সে বলেছে সেটা একেবারেই সিভিলাইজেশনের বেসিস, and there is no need to posit any apology at all. এইটুকুই আমার।
Thank you very much. আমার একটা কোয়েরি ছিল, আমি সরি করতে ভুলে গেছিলাম। সুন্দরবন নিয়ে যিনি বললেন, তো I would like to ask her that should the border between or within the mangroves be abolished or let it like it, still like it? I agree with her because just at the beginning of my speech, after listening all the papers, that can you find the boundary in the sky? Can you find the boundary below the water? So like that, she also put in correct way that you have to feel it. Sometimes we cannot see the boundary, but we can feel it, and we will have to adopt with both the sides of the boundary which divides the two things. And dividing is not always a bad thing, or we should not take it negative. We should not take it negative. We should divide also, or taking it a whole one. Isn't it? Okay, thanks to everyone.
In modern states, division is not confined to land only.
Yeah.
But it is also in the sky possible.
Thank you very much. So she wants to tell something. Could we allow her?
আমি বেশি সময় নষ্ট করবো না, মানে থ্যাংক ইউ ফর লিসনিং টু মাই পেপার সো কেয়ারফুলি। স্যার একটা পয়েন্ট রেজ করেন এবং আমার আমি খুবই আপ্লুত আর কি, মানে আমার স্যার গাইড এখানে বসে এবং এখানে কাউন্টার করেছে। আমি একটা ছোট্ট কথা শুরু করে শেষ করতে চাই, সময় শেষ আমাদের এই সেশনটা। আমি যখন আমার বলাটা শুরু করলাম তখনই কিন্তু বলেছিলাম যে ইন্ডিয়ান ন্যাশনালিজমের বেসটা হচ্ছে কিন্তু কালচারাল সিভিলাইজেশন, তার বাইরে কিছু নয়, এটা বলে শুরু করেছিলাম এবং শেষ করলাম এটা বলে যে ইন্ডিয়ান ন্যাশনালিজম গোটা ওয়ার্ল্ডে এমন একটা ন্যাশনালিজম এবং এমন একটা আইডেন্টিটি যেটা কিন্তু ইনক্লুশনের উপর বেস করে তৈরি হয়েছে, নট অন দ্য বেস অফ এক্সক্লুশন অর xenophobic এলিমেন্টস। যেখানে কিন্তু সবাইকে আপন করার, সবাইকে অ্যাকোমোডেট করার কথা বারবার বলা হয়েছে। এবং এই বুঝে মুখোপাধ্যায়ের জাতীয়ভাব কথা বললাম, তিনি কিন্তু মুসলিমদের ইসলামের ব্রাদারহুডের কথা সোচ্চারে বলে গিয়েছেন তার বিভিন্ন বইতে, তার বিভিন্ন গ্রন্থে। এবং তিনি বলেছেন যে ইসলাম আমাদেরকে ব্রাদারহুড শিখিয়েছে, আমাদের ভ্রাতৃত্ববোধের যে ধারণাটা সেটা কিন্তু ইসলাম থেকে এসেছে। এইরকম ছিল আমাদের নোবেল স্কলারদের, মানে আমাদের যারা থিঙ্কার, ইন্ডিয়ান থিঙ্কার, তাদের এই উদার মানসিকতা ছিল বলে কিন্তু আজ ইন্ডিয়া এখানে এখনো দাঁড়িয়ে। আমার মনে হয় না এটা আরো কোনো দেশে এক্সাম্পলটা দেখা যাবে বলে। So the balkanization was also a fate of this country as well. So that didn't happen. So there is something, right? So thank you so much.
সবাইকে বিশেষভাবে কৃতজ্ঞতা জানাই এবং আমি অধিককালের বক্তব্যে সুন্দরভাবে একটা কথা বলি উনি আমাদের খুব সুন্দরভাবে একটা জিনিস দেখিয়ে দিলেন সেকুলার 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 আমরা জানছি কিন্তু সেটা কোথায় আছে কিভাবে আছে সেটা কতটা ইমপ্লিমেন্ট করবো আমরা বিভিন্ন ক্ষেত্রে তাই তো স্যার এবং এই বিভিন্ন মুসলিম যা কিছুই বলবেন যা বিপদ হয় উনি আরেকটা কথা বলেছেন এখন বলার সময় বলেছেন যে ভারতীয় সভ্যতার কথা তাই তো স্যার তাহলে সেই সভ্যতাকে আমরা কোথা থেকে অনুসন্ধান করবো বিকলনীয় বা কলোনিয়াল ইন্ডিয়াতে না আরো অনেকগুলো বছর পিছিয়ে প্রাচীন ভারতে চলে যাবে প্রাচীন ভারতে যাবে সেখানে যে সভ্যতার কথা বলা হচ্ছে সেটা বৈদিক সভ্যতা হিন্দু শব্দটা কিন্তু নেই ধর্মটা যেটা বলা হচ্ছে সনাতন ধর্ম বা সনাতন সভ্যতা তাহলে আমি কি একটা অনুরোধ করবো ইতিহাসের একজন ছাত্রী এবং অধ্যাপিকা হিসাবে ভারতবর্ষকে আমরা যেন সবাই প্রকৃতভাবে চিনি কখনো যেন বিতর্কে জড়িয়ে না পড়ি বা বিতর্কিত মন্তব্য করে না পড়ি সেটা সংবিধানের ক্ষেত্রে হোক ইতিহাসের ক্ষেত্রে হোক সাহিত্য চর্চার ক্ষেত্রে হোক আমার একটাই অনুরোধ একটু অতীতের দিকে ফিরে তাকান চর্চা করুন সেখানেই পাবো অতীতের মূল বার্তা ধন্যবাদ স্যারকে এবং আমি থাকতে পেরে ভীষণ গর্বিত কারণ এই ভারত বিদ্যা চর্চা করলে একেবারে প্রথম বছরে অন্যতম আজীবনের সদস্য আমি এবং আসতে পেরেছি খুব আনন্দ সবাই থাকবেন আবার দেখা হবে
I would just wish to make a small observation over here. Bharata Charcha was set up by Professor Bhalotia, as you have said. But very few of us know that he started his teaching career from the Trivenidevi Bhalotia College in 1961. He taught here for 3 years in 1964, and then he went and joined the University of Bhalotia. So in a sense, as a true tribute, this is a homecoming for Bharata Charcha Kendra. When we are not going to College. And I'll hand over the proceedings to Ms. Raniganj for the next slide.
Good afternoon, all of you. Now we proceed with the second technical session. This session will be chaired by Dr. Raniganj. He is a professor of the Department of Sociology, University of Bharata. Okay, our first presenter of this session is Tanya Mohammed, and she will be presenting online. Her title is, the paper is Foreigner. Please unmute yourself and start the presentation. Unmute yourself. Tanya. Madam, please unmute yourself. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Sorry, ma'am.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. আমি তানিয়া মন্ডল, অ্যাসিস্ট্যান্ট প্রফেসর, ডিপার্টমেন্ট অফ পলিটিক্যাল সায়েন্স, তাম্রলিপ্ত মহাবিদ্যালয়, তমলুক। আমার আলোচ্য বিষয় হলো শরণার্থী সংকট, সহানুভূতি এবং সমাধানের পথে ভারত। পৃথিবীতে সব প্রাণী জন্মগ্রহণ করে স্বাধীন সত্তা নিয়ে, তবে শুধুমাত্র মানুষকেই জীবলোকের শ্রেষ্ঠতম প্রাণী বলা হয় কারণ শুধু সেই জন্মসূত্রে কিছু অধিকার পায়, যে অধিকার ভোগ করতে সে সমর্থ। অধিকার মানুষের ব্যক্তিত্ব বিকাশের সর্বোচ্চ সহায়ক। তাই সর্বোপরি বলতে পারি মানব পরিবারের সকল সদস্যের জন্য সর্বজনীন, হস্তান্তরযোগ্য ও অলঙ্ঘনীয় অধিকারই হলো মানবাধিকার। দ্বিতীয় বিশ্বযুদ্ধের সময় থেকেই ইউরোপে বিশৃঙ্খলা ও বাস্তুচ্যুত হওয়ার ঘটনা একটি ধারাবাহিক রূপ লাভ করে। 1950 সাল থেকে বিশ্ব আঙিনায় শরণার্থী সমস্যা ক্রমশ গুরুত্বপূর্ণ হয়ে ওঠে। প্রকল্পটির উদ্দেশ্যের মধ্যে সাম্প্রতিক শরণার্থী সংকটের কারণ, মানবাধিকার লঙ্ঘন, রাষ্ট্রগুলি শরণার্থী সংকট নিরসনে কি ব্যবস্থা নিচ্ছে এবং শরণার্থী সংকট হ্রাস করার কি উপায়, এই নিয়ে আলোচনা করা হয়েছে। একজন শরণার্থী হলেন সেই ব্যক্তি যিনি তার নিজ রাষ্ট্র পরিত্যাগ করেছেন কোনো ভিত্তি সংক্রান্ত কারণে, যথা জাতি, ধর্ম, জ্ঞাতিত্ব, কোনো নির্দিষ্ট সামাজিক গোষ্ঠীর সদস্যপদ অথবা রাজনৈতিক মতাদর্শের কারণে। এরূপ ব্যক্তি নিজ রাষ্ট্রের জাতিত্বের বাইরে অবস্থান করেন এবং ভীতি সংক্রান্ত কারণটি বর্তমানে বিদ্যমান থাকাতে সে নিজ রাষ্ট্রের সুরক্ষাধীন হতে অক্ষম বা অনিচ্ছুক। সম্মিলিত জাতিপুঞ্জের শরণার্থী সংক্রান্ত 1951 সালের কনভেনশনে শরণার্থীর সংজ্ঞা, অধিকার ও আইনি প্রতিষ্ঠার কথা বলা হয়েছে। 1951 সালে রাষ্ট্রসংঘের সাধারণ সভায় শরণার্থীদের করুণ অবস্থা নিরসনের উদ্দেশ্যে প্রথম একটি আন্তর্জাতিক চুক্তি স্বাক্ষরিত হয়, যার নাম ইউএন কনভেনশন রিলেটিং টু দ্য স্ট্যাটাস অফ রিফিউজিস। এছাড়াও পরবর্তীতে অনেকগুলি আমরা কনভেনশন পাই। তার লাস্টে যেটা আমি বলবো সেটা হচ্ছে যে UNHCR এর কথা, যেটা শরণার্থীদের সুরক্ষার জন্য আন্তর্জাতিক স্তরে সম্মিলিত জাতিপুঞ্জ তৈরি করেছে, ইউনাইটেড নেশনস হাই কমিশনার ফর রিফিউজিস। আন্তর্জাতিক সীমানা অতিক্রম করে যারা দেশান্তরে আশ্রয় খোঁজেন তারাই শরণার্থী। যে দেশে তারা আশ্রিত সে দেশে তারা বহির্গত এবং বিদেশি। এই শরণার্থীদের জবরদস্তি করে তার উত্তর দেশে ফেরত পাঠানো যায় না, তবে সে স্বেচ্ছায় ফিরে যেতে পারে। শরণার্থীদের ঘিরে আশ্রয়দাতা রাষ্ট্রে যে সমস্যা তৈরি হয় তার ফলে এই শরণার্থীরা বিভিন্ন সংকটের সম্মুখীন হয় এবং প্রতিটি আশ্রয়দাতা রাষ্ট্রে শরণার্থীদের ন্যূনতম সুরক্ষা ও জীবনযাপনের জন্য সহায়তা প্রদান করা রাষ্ট্রের কর্তব্য। বিভিন্ন কারণে শরণার্থীদের আগমন ঘটে। আমরা ভীতি সংক্রান্ত কারণে, যেখানে ব্যক্তি জীবিত থাকার অধিকার বা স্বাধীনতার অধিকার খর্ব হচ্ছে, গৃহযুদ্ধ বা সশস্ত্র সংঘাত, ধ্বংসাত্মক যুদ্ধ। এছাড়াও জাতি, ধর্ম, জাতিত্ব, কোনো নির্দিষ্ট সামাজিক গোষ্ঠীর সদস্য হওয়া, এই সমস্ত কারণে অন্য দেশে আশ্রয় নিতে বাধ্য হয়। এছাড়া জলবায়ু পরিবর্তনজনিত কারণ, যেমন খরা, বন্যা, ভূমিকম্প। এছাড়াও চরম দারিদ্রতা, নিপীড়ন প্রভৃতির কারণে মানুষ দেশ ছাড়তে বাধ্য হয়। এছাড়াও ক্ষুধা, খাদ্য নিরাপত্তা এই কারণে। এছাড়া তো মানবাধিকার লঙ্ঘন রয়েছেই, নির্যাতন, মানবাধিকার লঙ্ঘন, যে নির্যাতন, নির্বিচারে গ্রেপ্তার, মৌলিক অধিকার থেকে বঞ্চিত হলেও মানুষ বাড়িঘর ছেড়ে চলে আসতে বাধ্য হয়। আর রয়েছে লিঙ্গ বৈষম্য, লিঙ্গভিত্তিক সহিংসতা, যা ব্যক্তিদের তাদের নিজ দেশে নিরাপদে থাকা অসম্ভব করে তোলে। প্রধানত নিরাপত্তার দৃষ্টিকোণ থেকে রাষ্ট্র শরণার্থী সমস্যার বিচার করে। শরণার্থীদের সাথে মানব পাচারের মতো ঘটনাও ঘটে। বিশাল বিদেশি জনসংখ্যার উপস্থিতি যেমন দেশের সীমিত আর্থিক সংগতির উপর চাপ সৃষ্টি করে, তেমনি দেশীয় জনসাধারণের সঙ্গে সাংস্কৃতিক বিরোধের কারণ হতে পারে। স্থানীয় স্তরে জীবিকার জন্য প্রতিযোগিতা রাজনৈতিক অস্থিরতা সৃষ্টি করে। এছাড়াও জনগোষ্ঠীর মিশ্রণে গোষ্ঠীদ্বন্দ্বের সম্ভাবনা থাকে, আর বিশেষ গোষ্ঠীর সদস্যদের আন্তর্জাতিক সন্ত্রাসের সঙ্গে জড়িয়ে থাকার সম্ভাবনাও থাকে। বিগত শতাব্দীর পরিসংখ্যান লক্ষ্য করলে আমরা দেখতে পাই যে সকল রাষ্ট্র থেকে শরণার্থীরা আগত, সে সকল রাষ্ট্রের মানবাধিকার লঙ্ঘিত হওয়ার ঘটনা রয়েছে। আমরা এখান থেকে কিছু পরিসংখ্যানে দেখতে পাই যে 43.4 million refugees at present all over the world. 2 million children were born as refugees. 44 million stateless people residing in various countries. In 2023, nearly 1.1 million refugees returned home. And the number of refugees has tripled in the last decade. Between 2021 to 2023, 950 people are known to have died while crossing the Sahara Desert, and 7600 people on the move died or went missing in the Mediterranean Sea. UNHCR বর্তমানে বিশ্বের সর্ববৃহৎ মানবাধিকার সংস্থা। এখানে বেশিরভাগ মানুষ ফিল্ড ওয়ার্কার হিসেবে শরণার্থী শিবিরগুলিতে নিযুক্ত। এই সংস্থাটি বর্তমানে 134টি রাষ্ট্রে কর্মে নিয়োজিত এবং প্রতি মুহূর্তে বহু শরণার্থী এবং আভ্যন্তরীণ স্থানান্তরিত ব্যক্তিদের সাহায্য ও সুরক্ষা প্রদান করে থাকে। 1951 সালের শরণার্থী সংক্রান্ত চুক্তি অনুযায়ী সারা বিশ্বের সকল শরণার্থী বিশেষ কিছু মানবাধিকার ভোগের অধিকার। নিজ দেশে বাধ্যতামূলক প্রত্যাবর্তন না করার অধিকার, বেআইনি জরিমানা থেকে মুক্তির অধিকার, ধর্মীয় স্বাধীনতা এবং আদালতে আপিল করার অধিকার, নিজস্ব শনাক্তকরণ পত্র তথা বিচরণ করার জন্য প্রয়োজনীয় কাগজপত্র সংক্রান্ত অধিকার, স্বাধীনভাবে চলাফেরা করার অধিকার এবং শিক্ষা সংক্রান্ত অধিকার। ভারতে বহু সংখ্যক শরণার্থী বসবাস, বর্তমান পরিসংখ্যান অনুযায়ী 237,000-এরও প্রায় বেশি। তা সত্ত্বেও ভারত বিভিন্ন সময়ে বিভিন্ন শরণার্থীদের আশ্রয় দিয়েছে, কিন্তু তুলনামূলক বিচারে বলা চলে তিব্বতী শরণার্থীরা যতটা সুযোগ সুবিধা পেয়েছে, পরবর্তীকালে শ্রীলঙ্কা থেকে আগত তামিল শরণার্থীরা অথবা বাংলাদেশি চাকমা এবং মায়ানমার থেকে আগত রোহিঙ্গা শরণার্থীরা সে ধরনের সুবিধা কিন্তু পায়নি। ভারতের মনোভাব উত্তরোত্তর কঠোর হয়ে উঠেছে। 1971 সালে পূর্ব পাকিস্তান থেকে আগত শরণার্থীর ভিড় ভারতকে ক্রমশ যুদ্ধের দিকে ঠেলে দিয়েছিল। ভারতীয় সুপ্রিম কোর্ট শরণার্থীদের সাংবিধানিক সুরক্ষা প্রদান করেছে। আর্টিকেল 14 রাইট টু ইকুয়ালিটি ও আর্টিকেল 21 রাইট টু লাইফ অ্যান্ড পার্সোনাল লিবার্টি শরণার্থীদের জন্য প্রযোজ্য। ভারতের নিরাপত্তার স্বার্থকে সর্বোচ্চ গুরুত্ব দিলেও শরণার্থীদের যত্ন নেওয়া রাষ্ট্রের নৈতিক কর্তব্য। মর্যাদা, ভ্রাতৃত্ব ও নিরাপত্তার সার্বজনীন নীতির উপর ভিত্তি করে শরণার্থীদের জন্য একটি আইন থাকা প্রয়োজন, যা সমস্ত রাষ্ট্রের শরণার্থীদের সমস্যা নিরসনে গুরুত্বপূর্ণ ভূমিকা নেবে। রাষ্ট্রগুলি সাধারণভাবে শরণার্থীদের আশ্রয় দানে অনীহার কারণে ইউএনএইচসিআর তার কার্যপদ্ধতিকে খানিকটা কৌশলগত পরিবর্তন এনেছে। দেশের অভ্যন্তরে সুরক্ষা ব্যবস্থা করা গুরুত্বপূর্ণ হয়ে উঠেছে। দেশের অভ্যন্তরে নিরাপত্তা বলয় বা সেফ জোন সৃষ্টি করে উত্তেজিত জনগোষ্ঠীকে সুরক্ষা ও সহায়তা প্রদান করা যেতে পারে। বর্তমানে তাই প্রতিরোধী সুরক্ষার কথা ভাবা হচ্ছে, সমস্যার উৎসে গিয়ে চেষ্টা করা হচ্ছে যাতে শরণার্থী সৃষ্টিকারী পরিস্থিতির উদ্ভব না হয়। This is my reference. Thank you everyone.
একটা কি দুটো প্রশ্ন করা যেতে পারে? এখন শেষে
Okay, so our next presenter is Raniganj and his paper is titled Shadows of Identity.
Let's minimize this.
Okay. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Respected chairperson, moderator, and as you can see that the title of my paper is Shadows of Identity as man as a Shadows of Identity, Stereotypes and Realities of South Asian Workers in British World.
The daily needs of Raniganj. Okay, before starting, this is a work in progress. It's still 1.5 years and still under research. I'll just show you a very interesting project. The daily needs of Raniganj, full of it must be said, and with his hard rock and his stripes fully on the head. By light pilfering chewing nut, you know him at a glance. The fully with his death and faith, his future left to chance. For nothing accomplished, nothing done, will earn large advance. On 26th March 1912, an anonymous lady Vidya wrote a poem on the basis of our observation about the Indian Tamil tweets of the laborers. Term fully has often been used in a sense by the colonialists and the Indian nationalist leaders. The Indian laborers from India who were employed in overseas colonies were widely known as the coolies. They have been stereotyped as illiterate, ignorant, docile, God-fearing, seemingly liar, and cheeky. The geographic location of Malay had been very important as it lay between the India and Pacific Oceans. The coming of the Britons, they was already governed by the English East India Company from 1824 to 1858. Malay included federated Malay states, the strait settlements, and a few states which were not part of the federation. Following 1858, the control of Malay was transferred to British India and then to the Crown in 1867. Now, the migration of South Indians to Southeast Asia, particularly in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, presents a complex narrative interwoven with the themes of trade, culture, cultural exchange, and evolving identities. The key participants in this movement included Tamil Muslim traders, merchants, and Hindu moneylenders known as Chettiars, who played significant roles in vital old cities prior to the 1870s. However, for Malay, the dynamics of migration shifted notably to the influx of the Dalit Tamil workers from rural southern India. These individuals arrived in Malay predominantly under indentured agreements or through informal recruitment by Tanzanian agents who were known as the labor brokers or the intermediaries. Initially, the cohort of workers engaged primarily in sugar and coffee plantations. However, the growing demand for rubber soon rendered them indispensable to this swiftly expanding sector. The momentum of this transformation persisted until 1938, when the government support for labor migration from southern India began to wane. Intriguingly, the categorization of South Indian plantation workers simply as Tamils was critical in the development of the categorization of South Indian plantation workers simply as Tamils was critical in the development of distinct Tamil diasporic identity. Nevertheless, this emerging identity was often marred by several stereotypes. The workforce was frequently portrayed as irresponsible, docile, and indulgent in habits such as excessive chronic drinking. For plantation owners, these perceived traits hindered productivity, while Indian nationalists framed them as moral failures, which in turn ignited episodes of violence fueled by sexual jealousy. This again was a stereotype. Such adverse narratives gained prominence during the 1920s and 30s, a period characterized by a downturn in the rubber industry and growing nationalist calls for restrictions on Malay. In this context, the welfare of South Indian workers often became a pawn in the negotiations involving Indian nationalists, plantation owners, and government authorities. This paper investigates the various stereotypes associated with these workers in this transformative era, as well as the implications and consequences of these perceptions. I have also analyzed in the paper how the workers staved off these stereotypes or sometimes utilized them to meet their interests. This explanation also involves a formalized analysis of annual reports of the labor department of Malay documentation from Indian agents in Malay and local articles from the local newspapers. Now, the migration of laborers under mentorship contracts commenced in the late 19th century, which marked a chapter in the labor history. These individual laborers were sourced by, as I said, professional groups and agencies specializing in labor mobilization. Additionally, there existed another category of workers known as the free laborers or people or family laborers. Now, the stereotypes attached to the families and Indian laborers unfolded in tandem, creating a narrative steeped in bias and misunderstanding. Initially, the Indian nationalists showed little concern for the plight of the Indian laborers. However, as they observed the rampant racism directed upon the pre-Indian migrants, a stark realization began to dawn upon them that these migrants were the reasons, or their quote-unquote more exploited and regenerated condition was the reason for the stereotypes of the Indian migrants. At the same time, the companies or the labor brokers were also depicted not just by the internationalists but also by the bankers as fictitious figures within the plantation system, often cast as the antagonists responsible for the suffering of Indian laborers. Despite their varied roles, the companies were often labeled as deceitful, accused of luring laborers under false pretenses to the plantation money, while the workers or the laborers were considered as ignorant and simple-minded. Now, in the paper, I have shown some of the old pieces from the Malay, but I will try and answer them all. On one side of the spectrum stood the Indian workers who were often branded as impoverished, uneducated, and ignorant of their labor rights. They were unfairly depicted as habitual drinkers. They were unfairly depicted as habitual drinkers. I believe the mic will not work, so I will continue my presentation. As I was saying, that on one side of the spectrum stood the Indian workers, who were often branded as impoverished, uneducated, ignorant of their labor rights. They were unfairly depicted as habitual drinkers and morally questionable individuals. As far as the it would rather be better if those. Okay, so as far as the moral concerns about the Indian laborers are concerned, there was this Indian gentleman who was also commissioned by the plundered themselves, the Malayan plundered. His name was Rai. He was commissioned to paint a good picture of the laborers. So he stated that the Indian laborers are morally lax. The reason is that on paydays specifically, there is sure to be a serious disturbance of peace on one or other of the estates, and one who passes by the trolley shop cannot fail to see the large army of Panchamas of the Dalit laborers engaged in their bacchanalian orgies. From 1923 onward, the Indian government stationed an agent in Malaya specifically to keep a vigilant eye on the Indian affairs. The same similar sort of opinions were led by in the regions. For example, Pundiraman Nair in 1930 noted that the sexual jealousy often sparred horrific incidents, including murders and other violent crimes. And I believe the audience is too research to know to get the figures. Okay, so yet beneath the surface of these pervasive stereotypes, a dynamic and complex relationship existed between the families and the laborers. Often the scholars have considered this relationship as trust or traditional relationship, traditional human relationship, again, which says that it is moral imperative. But I consider this to be that the laborers use this trust situationally, specifically based on transactions. Now, rather than being mere victims or exploiters, they often join forces to advance their own interests, creating a partnership that causes considerable concern for both Malayan authorities and the planters. Time and again, they collaborated to deserve one state for another, seeking out better wages and conditions. This rising tide of desertions became a creative issue for the plantation owners and the governments alike. Thus, it could be misguided to view the families as solely nefarious or the laborers as simply passive victims. Their interactions reveal a wave of cooperation and potential for movement between various roles and states. Paradoxically, the very stereotypes that sought to diminish them were sometimes wielded by these individuals to validate their performance. This intricate system, however, began to fracture with the secession of Indian state support for unfilled labor migration to Malay in 1938. Yet, the entrenched stereotypes surrounding Indian laborers and the broader Indian community have proven remarkably resilient, quote unquote resilient, echoing in the present day and extending their reach to the entire South Asian region. Thank you for listening.
Good afternoon, everyone. The title of my paper is First Hindu Exodus from Eastern Bengal Revisiting the Noakhali 1946. The scene of Calcutta's direction embrace 6 police station of Noakhali district. The Muslim peasant were excited by false propaganda. The villagers were told that the Hindu had killed almost all the Muslim living in Calcutta and they were asked to kill their neighboring Hindu in retaliation. The leader of Muslim League, Ghulam Sarwar, declared jihad against the Hindu. He incited local Muslim people to avenge the Calcutta killing in public space. The Noakhali massacre had started 10 October on the day of Kojagari Lokhi Puja and it continued early November 1946. First riot had started Ramganj Bazar. The perpetrator looted all the Ramganj Bazar and set fire all the shops. Later, it affected all over Noakhali. The perpetrator targeted only Hindu people. At the time of Noakhali riot, Hindu women and girls were molested, raped, abducted, and forcibly converted by the perpetrator. The young girls who had not yet reached their marriageable age were not spared. The All India Women Conference had played an important role to rescue abducted women and their rehabilitation. Ashoka Gupta and her team successfully rescued thousands of girls who had been abducted during the riots. Large number of children also were killed and abducted of Noakhali riots. They had suffered trauma to see the horrific incident like killing of their parents or relative on their eyes. Sometimes children were thrown into fire. The pregnant women were forcefully abortioned and later they were married. Children also suffered different diseases like cholera and dysentery in refugee camp. They also suffer malnutrition due to communal disturbance. They had lost their school day and hampered their education. Gandhi was in Noakhali from 6 November 1946 to the end of February 1947. He visited village to village of Noakhali to restore peace. When Gandhi's peace appeal did not quell the communal riot in Noakhali, then he had remarked that Hindu must quiet Noakhali or face death. All the minorities of Noakhali left their homes. They took shelter in refugee camps. The circumstance the minorities led their life through apprehension of fear and trauma. This communal violence did not stop. As a result, the Hindu of Noakhali had started migrated to Kolkata and Assam. They had basically migrated Calcutta. Most of the displaced Hindu choose Kolkata because there had a opportunity for employment. A large proportion of intelligentsia and well-to-do people in Noakhali had either job in Calcutta or business or sent their children for education here. Thus, to see this massacre of most of the family had permanently sent their children in Kolkata. Later, the family gradually migrated Kolkata. They had their children in Kolkata, kept their children in various hostel, boarding, paying guest or relative house. They had admitted different school of Kolkata. The displaced family had rehabilitated by their own endeavorness. Most of the displaced family who migrated to Kolkata were wealthy. Initially, the poor people did not left Noakhali. they had migrated after partition of India. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next presenter is Oro Prasad Parida, and his paper is titled as Dismantling the Oro Prasad Parida. Are you here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Please continue.
Yeah. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Respected chairperson and my dear fellow presenters. So, my topic is dismantling the apartheid and manipulated borders, an insightful study of Nelson Mandela's leadership and negotiation strategy towards establishing democratic South Africa. A border, in its broadest sense, can be understood as both a physical and conceptual demarcation. Physically, it refers to a boundary line or a barrier separating areas or entities, such as national borders, geographic divides. On the other hand, conceptually, it represents an idea, a mental limit, or a dividing line that shapes perceptions, behaviors, and that divide ideas, cultures, identities, and ideologies. So here I'm talking about manipulated borders. So manipulated border refers to a border that is deliberately created or changed or altered for certain political or strategic reasons. Here, borders are often used as a tool of power and can be used to benefit certain groups or to undermine others. So in South Africa, there was a kind of system that was known as apartheid. Apartheid was a system of institutionalized racial segregation that existed in South Africa. It is one of the most practical example of manipulated borders because in South Africa there are two types of people, black and white, and the white people are also called as Afrikaners, and they own all the property of South Africa. They take advantage of the resources of South Africa, and always the black people are marginalized. So this border is created only for political gains of the whites. So my paper discusses here how Nelson Mandela, as a true leader, came to establish democracy in racially segregated South Africa. So racism, particularly under apartheid, create a system of racial segregation that essentially formed a border or an artificial border within the country, separating people based on race and restricting their movement, rights, and opportunities. So Nelson Mandela, a leader in the struggle against apartheid in South Africa, played a pivotal role in dismantling the system of racial segregation and discrimination. He did it through a combination of activism, negotiation, and international advocacy, eventually leading to a peaceful transition to a non-racial democracy. So Mandela believed in a vision that South Africa will one day treat all its citizens equally, and he fought for the vision. He overcame several obstacles, both individual and institutional obstacles, in order to reach at his goal. So during the prison, he started negotiating with the white government. Although he was kept in the Robben Island prison for 27 long years, but he came once again to forgive all the white people and started negotiating for a better South Africa or for a beautiful South Africa. So prison taught him to be a master, a negotiator. Soon after his arrival at South Africa's brutal Robben Island prison for life sentence, he assumed a kind of command. He befriended many of the white captors, introducing each one to the visitors as my guard of honor. He also tried to learn the language of Afrikaners so that he can negotiate better, he can know the white people better, so that he can proceed with the negotiation in a most peaceful manner. So, however, Mandela started negotiating secretly. He was the leader of African National Congress or ANC, but still he started negotiating without informing his friends or colleagues because there might be some ideological differences. That is why he started secretly talking with one of the that is South Africa's Minister of Justice, Kobe Kurtzi, in which he offered to meet secretly to discuss the possibility of negotiation. So the two men launched clandestine talks that laid the groundwork for a democratic post-apartheid South Africa. There are times when a leader must move out ahead of the flock and go off in a new direction, confident that he is leading people in the right direction. So Mandela's leadership and resilience inspired millions. His efforts paved the way for significant social and political changes in South Africa, leading to dismantling of the apartheid and the establishment of a more inclusive and democratic South Africa. So that is all. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Now I would like to call Dr. Banerjee and ask him to deliver some of his valuable feedback. So please.
We have a variety of topics ranging from refugee problem, large and normally, and South Africa, gave us the question, the food question in Malaysia, and all these are concerned with border in different ways. The refugee problem, well, the refugee problem is still a big problem in modern, in recent times and contemporary times. India, for example, faces the refugee problem in Myanmar civil war has resulted in the refugee problem in Northeast. And then, with regard to the Puri problem, well, it's a historical problem. Actually, it is part of history because it is part of colonial history. Such problem was during the age of British colonialism. But I would like to say that when though we do not have that police now, police now intellectual data now, but human trafficking, which originated during the days of the slave trade, is still there. Still there in various ways. Apart from female trafficking, which is very common, there are also, say, below in places like Thailand, Taiwan, etc. And forced forced into criminal activity. Cybercrime, the forced into cybercrime. And the Indian government has rescued many such people. And then because the apartheid problem, the apartheid created a division between the whites and the blacks. But the author does not say another thing, that Indians were also affected. Considerable number of Indians are in South Africa, in South Africa. After Gandhi started his movement with these Indians. And this is what I think my comment I will refer to communal act in Mohali. That's the famous fact, and Gandhi had to go to restore peace. Well, all my relatives, they had lived in, they were there in farmer East Bengal, and they have to flee after their Muslim neighbors, they don't go, really. But after the riot, they can become so that. So in this way, I have been historically also, and my daughter Roshi, is doing research on this partition, how partition has affected craftsmen, craftspeople on both sides, Bangladesh and West Bengal, Bangladesh, and also Pakistan, both sides of the Pakistan border. An exhibition from Burdwan, 15 identities in Bhalotia on this topic. So, this is all I have. Thank you very much.
With this, we come to the end of the second session. Now, we shall move forward with the third session. Professor Shobit also will take the lead.
Alright, so we come to the third and the last technical session of the day. In order to chair this session, I would like to call Dr. Rajoshi Chakraborty, Associate Professor, Department of History, Burdwan University. Professor, the round of applause. Alright, so our first presenter for the third session is Bhumika Ghosh.
Yes, I'm here. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bhumika Ghosh, and my topic name is Border and Social Exclusion Women Amidst Partition.
Excuse me, ma'am, I just wanted to say that if you want to turn on your screen, the video, you can do that.
Am I audible?
If you are audible, but the video is not visible. I was just saying that if you want to turn it on, you may.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, so may I start, please? Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bhumika Ghosh, and my topic name is Border and Social Exclusion Women Amidst Partition. 1947 খ্রিস্টাব্দে দেশভাগ আমাদের সকলের নিকট একটা দুর্ভাগ্যপূর্ণ ঘটনা, এটা আমরা সবাই জানি। এবং এই দেশভাগ কেবলমাত্র যে ভারতীয় উপমহাদেশকে দুটি ভাগে বিভক্ত করেছিল তাই নয়, এই দেশভাগ ভারতীয় সমাজকে, নারী সমাজকে, পরিবারকে বিভক্ত করেছিল। তাই এই দেশভাগ কেবলমাত্র ভৌগোলিক দিক থেকে বিচার বিশ্লেষণ যদি আমরা করি, তাহলে এর যে অন্তর্নিহিত ব্যথা, বেদনা, সেটাকে সম্পূর্ণভাবে আমরা কখনোই উপলব্ধি করতে পারবো না। দেশভাগের সাথে ও তার সময়, দেশভাগের সময় এবং তার পরবর্তী সময়ে বহমান একটা ফোর্সড মাইগ্রেশন ছিল, একটা অতীব ন্যক্কারজনক ঘটনা। ব্রিটিশ ভারতকে বিভক্ত করেছিল দুটো ভাগে, যার ফলস্বরূপই শুরু হয়েছিল এই ফোর্সড মাইগ্রেশনটা। কেন এই ফোর্সড মাইগ্রেশনটা হয়েছিল? কারণ ভারতে সেই সময় বসবাসকারী যে বিভিন্ন ধর্মের মানুষ, মেনলি হিন্দু এবং মুসলিম, যারা বাধ্য হয়েছিল তাদের স্থান পরিত্যাগ করতে। কারণ পার্টিশনের সময় হিন্দুরা মনে করছিল যে পাকিস্তান হিন্দুদের জন্য নয়, এবং অপরদিকে মুসলমানদের মধ্যেও সেই সেম একটা ধারণা ছিল, যে বা ভীতি ছিল যে ভারতে মুসলিমরা ঠিক সুরক্ষিত নয়, ভারত কখনোই মুসলিমদের জন্য নয়। তো এই কারণে ভারত তাদের পক্ষে বসবাসের উপযুক্ত নয়, এই ভেবে তারা ভারত ত্যাগ করে নতুন জীবনের সন্ধানে তারা এগিয়ে চলেছিল পাকিস্তানের দিকে। এবং এই যে দেশভাগ, এটা হয়েছিল কারণ কিছুটা হলেও ধর্মীয় প্রভাব ছিল, যে কারণে এই দেশভাগটা ঘটেছিল এবং যে কারণে দুটো ধর্মের মানুষের মধ্যে এই ভীতিটা জন্ম দিয়েছিল। তো দেশভাগের সময় হিন্দু মুসলিম নির্বিশেষে সকল ধর্মের মানুষই কি করেছিল যে নিজ বাসগৃহ ত্যাগ করে এগিয়ে চলেছিল একটা নতুন আশ্রয়ের সন্ধানে। তারা তাদের পুরনো ঘরবাড়ি, তাদের যে গাছপালা তারা মানে রেখে গেছিল, যে পশু পাখি তারা রেখেছিল, সমস্ত কিছু হারিয়ে তারা এগিয়েছিল। কিন্তু এগুলো একটা দুঃখ বা বেদনা তো বটেই, যে আমরা সবকিছুকে ছেড়ে সে সময় মানুষ এগিয়ে যাচ্ছে। কিন্তু এই সবকিছুর পরেও সব থেকে যে ভয়ঙ্কর ঘটনাটা ঘটেছিল এই দেশভাগের সময়, সেটা হয়েছিল নারীদের সাথে, নারী সমাজের সাথে। আমাদের সমাজে নারীকে পরিবারের, সমাজের সম্মানের সূচক হিসাবে গণ্য করা হয়। মনে করা হয় যে নারীর সাথে সমাজের, পরিবারের সম্মান ওতপ্রোতভাবে জড়িয়ে আছে। কিন্তু এই দেশ ভাগের সময় সব থেকে বেশি অসম্মানিত হয়েছিল নারীরা। দেশভাগ তাকে দিয়েছিল যদি বলি তাহলে দুঃখ, দুর্দশা পূর্ণ একটা অসহায় জীবন। তাকে তার পরিবার, তাকে তার ধর্ম, সমস্ত কিছু থেকে বঞ্চিত করেছিল। কারণ এই সময় দেখা যায় যে ধর্মের নামে নারীরা ধর্ষিত হয়েছিল। প্রায় 90,000 নারী ধর্ষিত হয়েছিল এবং তাদেরকে অ্যাবডাক্টেড করে নিয়ে চলে যাওয়া হয়েছিল। তাদেরকে হ্যান্ড টু হ্যান্ড প্রস্টিটিউশনে গিয়ে বিক্রি করে দেওয়া হয়েছিল। তো নারীর জীবন ভীষণভাবে অসহায় হয়ে উঠেছিল এই সময়। এবং যখন নারী ধর্ষিত হয়েছিল, সে যখন তার পরিবারের কাছেই ফিরে গেছিল, তখন তার পিতা, তাদের সমাজের লোকজন, তার নিজস্ব ফ্যামিলি তাকে কেউ আর অ্যাকসেপ্ট করতে রাজি ছিল না। তো সে কারণে সে নিজেই যখন দেখলো যে তার কোনো আর রাস্তা নেই, সে তখন নিজেই নিজেকে প্রস্টিটিউশন এলাকায় নিয়ে গিয়ে নিজেকে বিক্রি করে দিল। তো এইভাবে দেখা যাচ্ছে যে বহু নারী ধর্ষিত হয়েছিল এবং ধর্ষিত হওয়ার পর তারা যখন কোনো আশ্রয় খুঁজে পাচ্ছে না, তারা তাদের নিজেদের ধর্ষণকারীকেই বিয়ে করতে বাধ্য হয়েছিল। এবং এইভাবে দেখা যাচ্ছে কি যে দেশভাগ নারীকে তার সমাজ, পরিবার এবং ধর্মের যে মূল স্রোত থেকে সম্পূর্ণভাবে বিচ্ছিন্ন করে দিয়েছিল এবং তার যে একটা সম্পূর্ণ বা সম্মান সূচক যে জীবন ছিল সেটাকে অপবিত্র এবং কলুষিত করছিল। থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ।
ধন্যবাদ ম্যাডাম। এরপরে প্রিয়া মুখার্জি। প্রিয়া মুখার্জি আছেন?
Yes, sir. Please let me know if my slides are visible or not.
Yes, visible.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Priya Mukherjee, and I'm from the Department of Geography of University of Calcutta. And today, I'm here to present my paper entitled "Drawing the Divide: Rethinking the Ratcliffe Line Through Critical Cartography." In this paper, being a student of geography, I have employed a critical cartographic approach to demonstrate the Ratcliffe Line as a colonial cartographic construct, and have specifically focused on the Bengal side of the Ratcliffe Line. First, we'll look into a few concepts like political geography, which is a sub-branch of geography. It examines how power and authority have shaped the division of space in terms of states, nations, as well as borders. It also explores how political decisions and power structures have dictated who will control a specific area, who will draw the boundaries, and what implications do these have on the people who are living across or within these borders. On the other hand, we have the concept of critical cartography that challenges the notion of map as neutral, objective representation of reality. It argues that maps are powerful tools of control as well as influence. However, if you want to interlink both the concepts, it says that the political geography is the definition of political units like states, nations, as well as borders, which is also embedded in the act of mapmaking.
Next, we come to the key aspects of political geography, territoriality, borders and boundaries, geopolitics, scale, and power. Next, we need to know what are borders. Borders are just not lines on maps, but they are forces of changes, they are lived realities. Thus, it's very essential to critically study the border as they reveal how these arbitrary demarcations by political as well as the cartographic authorities can reshape an entire region. The key objectives of my paper include the following: to critically examine the Ratcliffe Line as a colonial cartographic construct, to assess the impact of partition-era boundary delineation on migration patterns, and to examine the land use and the land cover changes in the border zones. First, I'm going to discuss in brief what's the Ratcliffe Line. The Ratcliffe Line was drawn in 1947 and was meant to partition the British India into India and East Pakistan, later which we came to know as Bangladesh after 1971. But on the Bengal side of the Ratcliffe Line, it was much more than just lines on the map. This politically charged decision was taken in haste and was drawn by Sir Cyril Ratcliffe just in 5 weeks, without disregarding the geographic fabric of Bengal. This was mainly based on the religious majorities, the Hindus on the Indian side and the Muslims on the Pakistan side. However, my study focuses on the specific districts of the Ratcliffe Line. On the Bengal side, that is on the Indian side, it includes districts like Kuch Bihar, Malda, Nodia, North Chobbish Pargana, etc. And on the Bangladeshi side, it includes districts like Kushtia, Joshore, Khulna, and the Rajshahi. However, this decision has had a humanitarian crisis and also led to long-term changes like the border disputes, cross-border migration, as well as enclaves. I've prepared a flow migration map here, which shows the origin of migration from places in Bangladesh, such as Joshore, Khulna, Rajshahi, Chowgacha, Kushtia, etc., to the destination of immigration in places on the Indian side like Domdom, Belgachia, Canning, Dinhata, Kollani, etc. Few of the factors that influence these migration include agricultural land, then the availability of jobs in the tea plantation, especially in the North Bengal side, as we can see in places like Mathabanga, Tufanganj, and Dinhata. However, the informal sectors as well as the trade industries in various subdivisions like the Boshirat as well as the Bongaon, etc. These are several screenshots which I have prepared from the Google satellite imagery. It shows how the Ratcliffe Line has passed on the Bengal side, and all these I've split into kilometers of 2,500 to show and demonstrate the linear orientation of the Ratcliffe Line. It shows that it's far more complex, creating the area far more porous and poorly monitored, thus facilitating illegal migration and the cross-border smuggling. However, this concept also aligns with the concept of critical cartographic framework, thus challenging the neutrality of the borders, and shows how a single cartographic line that was imposed in 1947 has dissected or intersected different terrains, creating real-world problems regarding the border management issues. In the resultant discussion part, this map has been prepared. On the left-hand side, we find out the urban to total population ratio, and on the right-hand side, we find out the urban to rural population ratio only in the frontier city blocks. Here we find out on the left-hand side the higher urban ratios in Farakka and the Mahadev Nagar. Farakka at that point of time developed the Farakka barrage, which further led to the development of the urban town centers, that is the Farakka township, Farakka barrage township. However, the lower urban ratios has been found in Kalchini as well as the Rajganj, mainly because these were historically the plantation economies that were reliant on tea with limited urban infrastructure. On the right-hand side of the map, we find out the urban to rural population ratio in the frontier city blocks. Here, there are higher ratios in Shamsherganj as well as the Farakka, mostly because these were traditional trade routes, therefore pulling more people into their urban centers, which have access to both the rivers as well as the railway network. However, the Shamsherganj is also in vicinity to the Bangladesh, which created the zones of cross-border trafficking as well as the smuggling areas. In conclusion, I would like to say that the Ratcliffe Line has often ignored the natural features like rivers or ethnic boundaries. The two most important rivers, the Podda and Meghna, which were previously the lifeline of the people across the border, has cut through economies or communities, thus leading to forced migration. The line became a lived geography of trauma and movement as hundreds and millions of people had to relocate themselves from their ancestral homelands, leaving behind the line as emotional as well as a psychological barrier. However, the ongoing issues that still persist along the border includes enclaves. Here, the people who live in these areas often face confusions regarding their citizenship, regarding their rights and their access to resources, and various administrative challenges. Due to their ancestral ties, the cross-border migration is also still prevalent because people move back to their homelands for their work, family, safety, etc. These leads to cross-border migration in places like Malda, North Chobbish Pargona, etc. The border fencing, India and Bangladesh have tried to ensure the border security and have imposed extensive border fencing, which has often led people to cut off their ties with their ancestral homelands, etc. While I just want to conclude with this one final line that Ratcliffe line was drawn in haste, but its consequences were etched deep into the hearts of the land as well as of the people, turning cartography into a quiet catastrophe. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I will request Sheena Burdwan to present. I will request all the presenters to be online because we will have a discussion at the end.
Yes, sir. I'm ready.
Please start.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sheena, and I've recently completed my Master's in English and Cultural Studies from Punjab University. I'm delighted to be here to present my paper titled The Politics of Performance, a Semiotic Analysis of the Vaga Atari Border Ceremony. My research focuses on a close semiotic performance analysis of the ceremony that takes place daily at the Vaga Atari border, and I look forward to sharing my insights with you all. India and Pakistan share a long and complex history. As neighboring countries, they share a common border where soldiers from both sides take part in the daily ceremony. India shares its border with several countries, but it is only that this retreat ceremony is performed with Pakistan. This hour-long drill was first started in the year 1959. Initially started as a celebration of peace between the two nations, has now become complex as tension between the two nations have mounted over territorial intrusions and militant infiltrations. The drill has become a public spectacle of national pride. This ceremony is far more than a routine patriotic display, but becomes a site for political semiotic performance of regimented ideologies. Semiotics, the study of signs, helps us understand how people use symbols, gestures, images to represent knowledge and create meanings based on repeated social practices. Militaries around the world uphold traditions that express shared beliefs through specific signs, signals, and actions. While prior studies have focused on the diplomatic, political, and cultural aspect of the Vaga Atari border ceremony, there is little work applying literary and theoretical analysis to these performances. The entire performance runs on non-verbal signs, the height of a kick, the sharpness of a salute, the contradictions of the movement, and facial expressions. Semiotic analysis unpacks these signs as a language, a system of meaning that communicates aggression, pride, discipline, or defiance beyond spoken words. My aim of the research is to closely analyze the semiotics of body language, including the storms, glares, and the raised legs. Methodology. This study adopts a qualitative and interpretive analysis of the performance, incorporating the following methodologies. Firstly is the close semiotic analysis. Every evening just before sunset, the Vaga Atari border ceremony transformed into a stage where the soldiers from India and Pakistan performs the beat retreat ceremony. On the other side of the closed iron gates separating the two nations, spectators gather in large numbers, waving flags and shouting patriotic slogans and songs. Charles Sander Peirce's work is groundbreaking in the field of semiotics. In the context of Vaga Atari ceremony, the performance can be dissected through Peirce's theory of signs, highlighting the iconic, indexical, and symbolic signs that imbue the spectacle with meaning. Iconic signs are evident in the towering turbans and marches of the soldiers, which visually mimic the historical display of power, echoing the colonial era British ceremonies that once symbolized dominance. The gate slamming shut becomes an index of unresolved closure. Partition's ghost still haunts the space. There's a gendered semiotics as the aggressive gestures are coded as masculine, like the chest pounding of the soldiers, the combat readiness and dominance, which shows how man has always been the ultimate protector of the nation. Theatrical elements involves the performers, the audience, stage, script, costume, and the timing. This has been also shown how every action is a performative assertion of power, making the border not just a physical division, but as a space of ongoing conflict and competition. This is where the significance of the ceremony lies. Even though it may entertain with its dramatic choreography, it ritualizes the antagonism between the two nations every day. This paper concludes that the Vaga Atari border ceremony is far more than a routine patriotic display. It is a politically charged symbolic ritual that operates on multiple levels. Though its carefully choreographed aggression, exaggerated body language, and theatrical spectacle, the ceremony creates a ritualized performance of nationalist identity and rivalry. By engaging the audience's emotion and offering a cathartic release of patriotic fervor, the ceremony deepens the emotional and cultural boundaries that underlie the geopolitical border. Far from being a harmless tourist attraction, the Vaga Atari ceremony shows how the borders are performed, narrated, and emotionally sustained through embodied ritual. This analysis contributes to the broader field of border politics by showing how political meaning is constructed, dramatized, and perpetuated not only through formal diplomacy or conflict but through everyday aesthetic and performative acts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohan. So we have three presenters. We have three presenters here, and there are questions from the audience. Any questions to any of the presenters? Okay, so we are concluding this third technical session of the day. Thank you everyone.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. All our sessions are completed. We'll meet tomorrow at 10:30 a.m.